you to stand to the side or... Yeah. And Paul knows this? He's going to come up? Yep. Okay. I'm thinking, it might even be easier for you to have a chair seat over the screen or a chair so you're not having to sit on it. Well, first you really long. Yeah, okay. The chair on the other side. On this side? Yeah. So if you want to sit here. Sure. And then you're not up in... Yeah. So if Scott can get one. Good evening, everyone. If you would like to take a seat, we're going to be getting started in just a moment. Okay. All right, it's 7:01, and I'm sorry we're running late already. My name is Rebecca Smith. I am the president of the Cloverdale and District Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to welcome you here this evening. I'm going to start with a brief housekeeping item. Every one of you, I'm pretty darn sure, has a cell phone and something that beeps and whizzes and whirs and vibrates in your pocket. Can you please put that on silent so only you get to enjoy that and the rest of us aren't disturbed? So please do that now. Giving you a moment to do that. I've done it too. All right, so I'm very happy to see all the numbers out here tonight. As people who know me or even are just briefly acquainted know, politics is my jam, and I love it. This is fun for me, but it's also my duty as a citizen in Canada. And I'm glad to see, and I'm going to project that you think that too. That's why you're here tonight, to find out more about your candidates and to participate wholly in our democracy. So, without further ado, I welcome you. I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we live, work, study, and play in a region south of the Fraser River that overlaps with unceded traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Kwantlen, Musqueam, Katzie, Semiahmoo, Tsawwassen, Clayoquot, and Kikwetlam peoples. For that, we are profoundly grateful. And I always want to make sure that we are thanking them for their welcome to us on this property. So, I will now cede the floor briefly to one of our sponsors, the Cloverdale BIA, and Paul Orzetti, for a few words of welcome.
Thank you very much, folks. I'll try not to yell here, and I'll keep the mic away. I want to thank you all for taking the time to come out here. Politics is unfortunately taken a bad rap down south. I'm hoping all of us really can try to contain our emotion and make sure that the questions are good. Everybody's here with the best of intentions. They all want to tell you why they love Cloverdale and tell you what they believe they can do for you all. So I'm very thankful that you're here. I'm also a director of the Chamber of Commerce. Both of our organizations share an office, and we're very committed to continuing to make Cloverdale a special place. So God bless you all for coming, and thank you. And big round of applause for them coming here to be brave. So might not clap later.
Thank you, Paul. And now I'm going to ask Candy Ashdown to speak a few words from the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Candy Ashdown, and I'm a realtor and a member of the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. I'm here today with my fellow realtor, Kim Phillips. The Fraser Valley Real Estate Board is an association of more than 3,600 realtors in 7 communities south of the Fraser River. Our association has been supporting these types of events since 2001 because we feel it's important to know who we're voting for in an election and what they stand for. The people we elect to be our representatives will make decisions on our behalf, which will affect us now and for many years to come. We appreciate the Cloverdale District Chamber of Commerce for making it possible for us to be here this evening and to continue to support these events. And we look forward to the meeting and dialogue to follow. Thank you.
Okay, so now we get down to the fun part. This presentation is going to be, to the best of our ability, nonpartisan and fair, and everyone will get the same amount of time to answer every single one of the same questions. So you will hear the breadth of answers from each of the parties represented tonight, and we will try and cover as many subjects as possible. The questions we will be asking have come from our membership, from the public, from various stakeholders in the community. And tonight I did receive a few extras when people arrived, so if we have time and we keep to our schedule, we may be able to ask a couple of the extras that we've received tonight. So candidates get 1 minute to introduce themselves to begin with. Each will be given either a yellow card when they have 15 seconds left of their minute and a red card when their minute is over. When the red card goes up, their mic will be cut and they are asked to speak no more. We'll be fierce about that so everyone has a fair chance to represent themselves and we get through as many questions as possible tonight. So, without further ado, I'm going to start the introductions with Caleb.
Hello everyone. I am representing the Green Party of Canada in the Cloverdale Langley City riding. And the reason why I am running with the Green Party of Canada is because as a 29-year-old male, I want to have a family in the future. And I'm genuinely concerned about whether I should have children in the future. And I see a lot of youth and children around our communities that feel the exact same way, that are experiencing anxiety, depression, lots of different mental health issues because they are uncertain about their future. I put my education on hold so that I can run for politics to try and make a difference in this community and communities around Canada. I work as a social services mental health worker in the downtown east side in the opioid crisis there, and I find that we need more social services and better programs like universal income, universal basic income, universal pharmacare as well.
Thank you, Caleb. Next, we'll turn to John.
Well, good evening, and thanks for coming out this evening. For those who don't know me, my career prior to politics was over 30 years with Parks Canada, our National Park Service. And what prompted me to get involved with politics was that in 2012, I was the acting superintendent at Pacific Rim National Park Reserve, and that year, under the Harper government, I had to lay off all of the scientists. It was a direct attack on evidence-based decision-making, and I thought we need to do better. So in 2015, I was elected as the representative for Cloverdale Langley City. It's been a true privilege to listen to voices, to have conversations on the doorsteps and on the coffee shops of this community for about 6 years now. And I've been able to take those priorities and fight for them and advocate for them in Ottawa. This is a really critical election. It's a time for us to continue building on those successes. We have a diverse community. I believe that somebody needs to respect and encourage the diversity that we have here. And that is what I will continue to do should I be reelected in October. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next, we'll turn to Ray.
Hello, and thank you very much for coming out to hear us talk. My name is Ray Banwari. I'm representing the NDP party for Cloverdale Langley City. I'm a retired RCMP officer, father of two beautiful children. We live right here in Cloverdale. And I was also the national president of the body that fought to unionize the RCMP, and that was a battle unlike any other I've ever taken on. A lot of people over the years have told me, Ray, you need to get involved. You need to get involved in politics. And because they saw that I'm one of these people, when it comes to significant, important things, I'm there. And I don't walk away. I don't give up. And I don't go away. I've decided to run to represent people here in Cloverdale because I see a lot of the issues, the very significant issues that need to be addressed from the crime, which is huge in Surrey, to the issues happening in opioid crisis and for families not being able to make ends meet, and the green climate issue in terms of all of the pollution. So I'm looking forward to your support as you get to know me, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, Ray. Next and last but not least, we'll hear from Tamara.
Will it ruin your frame if I stand? May I stand? Good evening. My name's Tamara Jansen, and I am the Conservative for Cloverdale Langley City. I was born and raised here. I'm local. I only spent a very short time away in the prairies. I hated it. I really missed the mountains. I've been involved in many charitable projects here locally in the riding. I'm a farmer. My husband and I built a farm. We started with 2 of us, and by the time we sold our farm to our son, we had 200 employees. So there's one thing that I do know, and that's how to make payroll. And I also know how to make sure that I spend within the budget. So I think that's a really good thing when you go to Ottawa. I think the other thing that is important is that I have employed many people over the years, and you learn what real people really need, what are their concerns. And I think that I want to be able to represent you as regular people in Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and now we get to the part that everybody's been chomping at the bit for. We're excited to hear your answers to our questions. I'll remind our audience that everyone is very brave to be here and face the firing squad of both myself and you, because your votes are the ones that they're vying to have. This is a job interview, and you are the interviewers. So do listen with open minds and closed mouths. Thank you. So, number 1, I'm going to start with John. Currently, a petition with 4,241 signatures is circulating locally that aims to ban hospital ER patients' parking fees and fines across Canada by adding a bylaw to the Canada Health Act. If you are elected, would you mandate to make this important change to abolish the outrageous fines and penalty threats illustrated by hospital parking management companies operating in Canada?
To start with, I'm not sure if everybody else had the chance to see the proponent for the petition outside this evening, and I had a chance to stop and talk on the way in. We have spoken previously about this, and I said I would be proud to present the petition to the House of Commons if I'm re-elected in October. The issue that we have to look at is how to advocate for our citizens. I've heard from many people that when they go to the emergency, that having to pay for parking presents issues and problems for them. And I think that as a federal government, we can look at what role we can play in addressing that concern. People are in a desperate time when they're having to visit emergency, and if there's a role that the federal government can play in this discussion, then I'm happy to be that voice. And so I've agreed to taking the petition as well as other petitions that I have presented in the House, and having a government response to that.
Thank you, John. The next to answer will be Ray.
Thank you. Very important issue. In fact, in my campaigning door to door, I've spoken to people specifically about this who have to go to, when they go to the hospital, they have to visit family that is sick. The last thing they want to come out to is to get a ticket or, be fined. That's a big issue. And I look at it in this context. Everybody's been to City Hall, Surrey City Hall. You can go inside, register your plate, and park for free for 2 hours. Tell you what, if we can do that at Surrey City Hall, we can do that at every single hospital. That is a non-starter in my books, and I would gladly support any petition that will help our folks, at least in some of the most critical times when they need help and they need care. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Next, Tamara.
Thank you. So, as John mentioned, when you're going to the hospital, it's a very stressful time, and parking fees is probably the last thing on your mind. I know how difficult it can be to try and figure out how to work that machine with your visa. So, I think anything that makes it easier for families when they're in a crisis time to be. Feel like they are supported is very important, and I think that the federal government wants to ensure that our healthcare system is really very supportive, And the Conservatives have always been that way. They've always wanted to make sure that families in crisis do receive the support they need. So yeah, parking fees is, that's a hard one to to not love, to get rid of those. Thank you.
Thank you. And Caleb.
Yes, and I also want to raise the question of concerns with healthcare in our community, especially hospitals and healthcare of our citizens, seniors, and young people regarding getting into the hospitals and emergency rooms. We have lots of people that are falling through the cracks of our system and end up at their worst time in a major crisis in the hospitals. And what we want to try and do is build community supports in our communities that reach out to these individuals before they end up in these hospitals, putting increased wait times on our doctors and nurses that are already working as hard as they can.
Thank you. Question 2. Good job so far. The amount seniors have earned and contributed over the years has not resulted in a livable income with the present CPP, OAS, and GIS. These amounts have not kept up with the rising cost of living, leaving seniors in increasingly precarious financial positions. What is your party promising and doing for seniors? We'll start with Ray.
The NDP party has put forward a very, very significant platform in regards to healthcare as it pertains to all people, not just seniors. But specifically for those living in or with a small income, having things simply like your medications covered for by pharmacare is going to be significant. Having dental coverage is going to be significant. Having mental health coverage too will also be significant. You're living on a fixed income, there's only so far your dollar can go. I'm proud to say that our party is the only party that's come up with a comprehensive program like this. And I've been asking myself, as a father of 2, and having to go through the different programs that are provided through healthcare, why has this not been done before? I'm very proud to say that the NDP party will be there to support seniors in this very significant issue.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Tamara.
Thank you. So seniors, we recognize that every dollar counts when they're on a fixed income. And the Conservatives have actually brought forward a platform already that deals with a whole bunch of ways that we can help them get ahead. So one of the things is the universal tax cut, which is going to give them $440 back into their wallet by the end of the year. There's a new age credit. There's also public transit credit. But the really big one that's going to make a difference is when we scrap the carbon tax. The carbon tax makes absolutely everything that you buy, from gas to groceries, more expensive. That's going to make a huge difference in your pocket. And they also have something that I thought was cool, an incentive for retirees to go back to work. We've hired a lot of retirees in our life. We love them. They're awesome. They're the best, most fun people to have around. And I think that's fantastic to give them that incentive to get back out when they want to with flexible hours.
Thank you. And next, Caleb.
So with the Green Party of Canada, we want to bring in programs like universal pharmacare as well as a universal basic income. So what universal basic income would do would help eradicate poverty in Canada, thus not allowing our seniors in our communities to fall in poverty and potentially not be able to pay for their medications or their community supports that are there. The Green Party doesn't believe in letting anyone fall behind, especially with the climate crisis and emergency that we're facing nationally and globally as well.
Thank you. And finally, John.
Our party recently announced our part of our platform for seniors, and along with the $1,000 that we put into the seniors' hands over the last 4 years through increases to the guaranteed income supplement and the old age security, we would have another increase. As importantly, we would also increase the survivor's benefit under the Canada Pension Plan by an extra 25%. When my father-in-law passed away, we heard from my mother-in-law that all of a sudden you have the loss of one income, and that can really, really negatively affect widows and widowers. And so we're addressing the needs of single seniors who have lost a partner. We would also increase the old age security by 10% when people turn 75 years old, because as seniors age, their health care and living costs do become more expensive. And so those are a few of the items we would do to help deal with the affordability of seniors in our community.
Thank you. The next two questions were submitted by the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board, and I'm going to ask Kim Phillips to come up and ask those questions. That's the order. It's on.
Research by the Mortgage Professionals of Canada suggests the new federal mortgage rules, such as the mortgage stress test, has prevented about 100,000 Canadians from buying their preferred homes. Moreover, some people renewing their mortgages or buying their first home have been forced to pay more for their mortgage or turn to lenders who are not federally regulated and who might charge higher interest rates. Fraser Valley Realtors would like to know what changes would you make to the mortgage stress test or what other existing mortgage policies to make it easier for Canadians to buy or keep their home. Tamara?
So what we see is we have a supply problem. And so what the Conservatives have done is, besides, we'll talk about the stress test, what they've done is they've said, let's make surplus federal real estate available for development. I think that's fantastic because not only do we have a supply problem, we have a big demand. So if we bring in more property for development, I think that's fantastic. They are going to remove the stress test for when you renew your mortgage, because as you say, a mortgage company has you basically, in a stranglehold if you're not going to be able to qualify. So I think that's really quite exciting as well. So, yeah.
Ray?
What the NDP party has put forward to address this in a significant way is the low-income housing platform or plan that they've put for a lot of people who cannot afford to buy homes. People getting into their first home are finding it harder and harder, and part of it is because of this stress test that was put forward. So they have given folks the ability now to be able, through another venue, to be able to get into a home. Another underlying factor that people need to be aware of here that's impacting that is the money laundering issue, which everybody knows about, which is tied to the lack of funding for the National Police Force by both the Conservatives and the Liberals over the years. That is a key component to what is causing housing to be driven up in terms of costs. So having this stress test too does not help either. So the NDP party is one party that is going to be working towards looking at removing that, amending it, and finding good ways or better ways to help folks acquire a home.
Caleb?
Thank you. Of course, we can find better ways to give people mortgages, but what the main issue here is, and I want everyone to understand this with the economics, is that we have close to 50% of Canadians living paycheck to paycheck right now. And I want to know what type of Canadian that's living paycheck to paycheck is going to be able to afford a mortgage to begin with. So we need to figure out ways to bring our community together and support them with actual supportive programs like universal basic income, universal farmer care, national daycare program, getting rid of tuition for students, abolishing student debt, so that we can actually have our youth be able to buy property in this market and deal with the coming changes. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
One of the things that our government did these past 4 years was introduce the National Housing Strategy. The federal government had been absent from any housing discussion in this country since the 1970s, and we felt that it was really important that we engage with the provinces, territories, and Indigenous groups to look at housing And with that, we've looked at a whole bunch of commitments to build affordable rental housing. We introduced the Home Buyers Incentive Program, which will allow 10% equity from the government, which reduces mortgage payments by 10% on new built homes, 5% on used homes. That can save hundreds of dollars per month for families on their mortgage payments. The equity in the property is shared, and so if there is a reduced price when the house is sold, you pay back the lower 10% or value. On the stress test, it did, with the tweaks we made, change or slow down the growth in the market to deal with the affordability issue, and it's time that we revisit the stress test to see what next need to be done with it.
Thank you. So our next question is, Canadians can now legally grow 4 cannabis plants in their homes. Canada's National Collaborating Centre for Environmental Health found 1 mature cannabis plant can result in humidity equal to 7 tropical plants, which mean there is an increased risk of mold, fungus, and other health risks impacting families. Unfortunately, the provincial and federal governments have not established safety standards for growing cannabis in homes or remediating cannabis homes. Given the lack of safety measures, mortgage lenders and insurers are reluctant or will not cover the home that has a record of a past or current cannabis growth, regardless of the number of plants. Fraser Valley Realtors want to know, how would you protect and educate residents and potential home buyers on the health and financial risks relating to growing cannabis in their home? Tamara?
First of all, I can say I agree wholeheartedly. It's a massive problem. This bringing the cannabis into legality was done very poorly by the Liberals, unfortunately, and it's a mess. And I can tell you the Conservatives are committed to cleaning it up. I mean, these are unintended consequences, and it's terrible. A home is almost unlivable after it's been used for a grow up, and here we've said, oh, go ahead. So that's our commitment. We're gonna make sure that we fix that mess.
Thank you. John?
Well, I am curious if the Conservatives would clarify their position, because it's been a bit ambiguous in the media whether they would actually go back on the legalization. I'd like to remind people that the reason that we legalized is that cannabis use amongst teenagers in Canada was the highest in the westernized world, and billions of dollars were going into organized crime's pockets each and every year. So we feel that the best way and only way to deal with this was to completely change the framework and to go for legalization. Now, there are growing pains, absolutely. We still don't have retail operations within our communities south of the Fraser, and so that means that our users are still having to go to the drug dealers on the streets, which continues to fuel the organized crime trade, and so we need to deal with this. Along with that, it's dealing with the question you've raised about growth at home. The regulations need to follow. We have to work with the provinces and the municipalities. This is work that is happening, and it will improve over time. So I'd say let's look at where we are 1 year out, 3 year out, 5 years out, and have we achieved the change we wanted to make.
Thank you. Ray?
Very significant problem we have here in Canada. The Liberal Party was the one that legalized it. Not one person that I've spoken to at the doorstep, if they are family or have kids, has agreed with this legalizing marijuana. And I, for one, having been to pot house grow-ups, unlike any of the other people sitting here beside me, have no idea the amount of damage it does to not only the homes, but the people who are impacted by it, the neighborhoods. It's a huge, huge issue. So, you know, these are things you have to look at when it comes to issues as big as this, and we have to do things to reduce it being able to be allowed. And for people that have had grow houses, it must be provincially identified within the cities too as well, creating a database so potential buyers know what the house is about, what it's been used for, because you don't want to move into or have your family go live in a house that has been used as a grow up. Thank you.
Thank you. Caleb?
So clearly having grow-ops is a bit of a sticky issue, especially with the fact that we have cannabis legalized. But it seems pretty clear if someone who's personally growing 4 plants in their house wants to have those 4 plants, that to deal with the mold, those kind of things, we just let them grow it in their backyard because it's a plant and it's 2019. So I think that we need to get over this fear of cannabis and move past it, because we need to start addressing real issues like the opioid crisis and people who are currently dying every single day because of it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kim, and thank you, candidates. I'll now move on to questions supplied by the Cloverdale BIA, who have graciously allowed me to ask those questions. Okay. What are your thoughts on ways that the federal government can help address homelessness and poverty? Plus, how bad is it really in the Cloverdale Langley City riding? I will start this question with Calum.
So I've worked in the downtown east side now for about 3 years, working in the opioid crisis there, overdose prevention, doing harm reduction. I've worked in programs that have brought clean needles as well as other supplies to people who have a substance use issue and concurrent disorders, being mental health issues as well. We need to address the homelessness crisis that is happening in the downtown east side, but we also need to prepare our communities out here for it as well. I've lived in Langley most of my life, and the difference between when I was growing up and compared to now is quite different. And I think everyone realizes that, and I think we need to understand that this is an issue that is going to continue to grow, especially if we continue to grow economic inequality as well.
Thank you. Next, Tamara.
So I have been knocking on thousands of doors, and homelessness is an incredibly challenging issue for us here in this riding. I think everybody's very, very clear on the fact that it's not just that you don't have a home. It's very complex. It may be mental health issues. It may be addiction issues. It could be perhaps you've gone into a depression when a spouse died and you lost your home. So I was quite happy to see that there's a number of groups in Langley City that have been getting together. They're nonprofits that have been working with the homeless population. And they are trying to, rather than work in silos, they're working together. And the idea being that they would be able to give a better support to the people and actually get them the kind of services that they need. And we are, as Conservatives, determined to ensure they receive that correct support.
Thank you. Ray?
The NDP party has taken a holistic approach when it comes to this, starting with low-income housing, for one thing. But being homeless, there's so many factors that are combined, from mental health to not having work to addictions, all of these issues. It's not a one case or one size fits all. We need to come together as a community, bring all of the groups that can be brought forward to assist people and find out what is at the core of the reason why they're homeless. Is it an addiction? Is it mental health issues? And this is one thing I'm very proud that the NDP party has brought forward, is an approach that combines all of the partners to address this, starting with the low-income housing. So they will at least have a place where they can go once these other issues are addressed. Again, whether it be mental health, whether it be not having a job, maybe it's an addiction or whatnot.
Thank you. And finally, John.
The National Housing Strategy that I previously referenced has a commitment to reduce homelessness in Canada by 50% within 10 years. We do have a homeless issue in the riding of Cloverdale Langley City, and I've been out there with the workers who are dedicated to dealing with the homeless in our community. I've experienced it firsthand and talked with these people. They need to have support in finding a home, and our government is investing with the province as a very supportive partner in BC Housing. We are doing things. We have supportive housing opening in the township of Langley at the old Quality Inn site by Home Depot that will take 48 of our homeless people off of the streets in the coming weeks. The population between Cloverdale and Langley City, there's some transiency between the two of them, and there's estimated to be over 100 people living on the streets, and people tell me that, and I know myself in the time I've lived here, we are seeing increased numbers. I think we owe it to our citizens to deal with this issue, to deal with it quickly and effectively, to provide them dignity and solutions to this crisis.
Thank you. Our next question. What do you believe to be the most important issue facing residents of Cloverdale, Langley City in the next few years? I will start this question with Ray.
From the folks that I've spoken to door knocking, affordability is a huge, huge issue here in Cloverdale. People living from paycheck to paycheck, not being able to afford things, not knowing where their families and their kids, if they're ever going to be able to afford a home. I have two of my own, and I'm very concerned as a father how they're going to be able to afford anything at the rate things are going. Everything keeps going up and up, except for our wages. It's significant. It's a huge issue. The second issue that I've been hearing at the doorstep is the public safety issue. And being prior RCMP, everybody knows about the gang violence that's happening in Surrey. So these are some huge issues that have come forward. Climate is huge too, but more so people are more concerned about the day-to-day things that they have to worry about. How are they going to feed their families? How are they going to make ends meet and provide for their kids? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Tamara.
So I wish it was just one issue, but having talked to thousands of people, obviously affordability is huge. You know, like everybody knows, there are many people in our riding that are barely making ends meet, and they're $200 away from not being able to pay their bills. So affordability is absolutely huge. There's no doubt about that. But transit, obviously. We need to be able to get around, and we have more and more people moving in, and we're having a harder time getting in and out of our city. Crime, huge. I mean, there's a lot of people having stuff stolen out of their backyard. And health. We can't even find doctors, and the Conservatives are looking at different exciting ways how we can get more doctors. There's a lot of issues that we need to deal with that are all very important.
John?
Well, I'll answer the question that you asked, which is the top issue. And in the tens of thousands of conversations that I've had on people's doorsteps over the last 6 years, the number one, as Ray said, that I'm hearing is affordability. Families are stretched. We are the second youngest riding in the province of British Columbia. We have young families who are getting established, who are trying to get a toehold into the housing market. They're trying to raise their children. In many cases, they're supporting elderly parents, aging parents. We have seniors who are on fixed incomes and living in an expensive market. So affordability is the top issue, and I hear this day after day after day on the doorsteps. This is why I'm really proud of the work that our government has done. One of the first things we did when we formed government in 2015 was to introduce the Canada Child Benefit. It took all of the previous programs, made it a non-taxable program that is indexed. It has lifted over 300,000 children out of poverty. It brings $7.5 million per month into this riding to help support our families. I'm very proud of it, and that program has been a real success.
Caleb.
Could you repeat the question again? Sorry.
What do you believe to be the most important issue facing residents of Cloverdale, Langley City in the next few years?
So out canvassing, I've noticed a lot of constituents are concerned, obviously, about affordability right now. So living, obviously, paycheck to paycheck is an issue. We're also talking about political electoral reform, bringing proportional representation, which over 70% of Canadians do agree on. We're also talking about tax reform. So we're going to be reforming our tax system so that we don't have wealthy individuals and large corporations being able to take their money overseas into tax havens and tax loopholes, where we lost $25 billion in revenue last year alone, which we could have paid for a universal pharmacare with about $15 billion of that. We're talking about poverty, universal basic income so we can eradicate poverty, and we're talking about climate so that our youth and our children actually have a future to look forward to.
Thank you. National security, terrorism, protecting Canadians from crime in its many forms is stated as the number one priority of the federal government. The federal government currently subsidizes the RCMP services to the City of Surrey to the tune of $20 million per annum. A change in a municipal force, as proposed by Mayor McCallum, will see that subsidy disappear. Do you support keeping RCMP services in the City of Surrey? We'll start with John.
So our government has already committed to maintaining the 10% subsidy that is provided to the City of Surrey for RCMP. We feel that issues of community safety are best left to the municipal government. You don't necessarily want the federal government coming in and telling your cities how to police themselves or run themselves. So we're respecting the direction that the City of Surrey has taken. That being said, I am a huge supporter of the RCMP. I have seen the work that they've done in this community. I've been out on ride-alongs with them. They do absolutely outstanding work. And I think that the citizens of Surrey, through the vote, it's being seen that they gave the mayor and council the mandate to move ahead with this. As citizens, if you're not in agreement, this would be the time to be speaking up and letting municipal and provincial officials know that you may not see that. But at this point, the federal government will support whatever direction the people of Surrey determine to take while maintaining the 10% subsidy.
Thank you. Caleb?
So, like John, we agree that we should allow them to decide for themselves which type of police force they would like to have running over the riding here. But I believe that we need to look at the research. I think that we need to look at the facts and see how much this is going to cost. We need to look ahead. We can't just look 4 years ahead. We have to look ahead 10 years, 15 years. Is this going to cost us less? Is this going to cost us more? These are all things that we have to think about when we're making such a drastic change as this.
Tamara.
So, as was mentioned, this is a municipal issue, but the federal government will support whatever the municipalities choose. So, this is a democratic society. You need to do your very best to be a part of the process when these decisions are being made. What the Conservatives are doing is making sure that there will be things in place so that crime will be actually punished. That people aren't getting a slap on the wrist, and they're going to support whether it's RCMP or Surrey Police, that they're going to be supported with the kind of legislation that's needed. I know the Liberals did a whole bunch of changes so that there are a lot less punishments for some serious crimes, and that doesn't help us. That would be Bill 71.
I'm going to ask
C-71.
you guys to refrain from referring to other parties' actions and respect that you speak to what you will do.
Okay.
And interactions aren't necessary.
So I'm not allowed to say bill.
Speak to what your party will do.
So may we mention a bill? I'm sorry, I've never done this before. May we mention a bill?
It's okay. Stick to what your party will commit to doing.
Okay.
And not attacking your opponent's records or platforms.
So no reference to anything that other parties have done before?
Correct.
Okay.
And Ray.
This is a very significant issue. Being a former RCMP, leading the fight to unionize, at the core of all the problems happening in the RCMP for decades, it's the fact that they've never had a collective bargaining agreement and independent representation. Governments past and current have never, ever supported your national police force as it should have been. This issue for the costing is very significant, and I believe that the RCMP could do a way, way better job if they were funded and if they were resourced to the extent that every other municipal police agency in Canada is funded. That is at the core of the issues. So I do support that the RCMP be kept, because they do all kinds of awesome work for our communities at a provincial level, at a municipal level, at a federal level. You're not going to get that from a municipal police agency at all. not the history, not the ability, not the knowledge base, and not the experience.
Thank you. There has been a mixed acceptance of various provincial governments on the carbon tax as a tool to counter climate change. Instead of targeting consumers, one should target oil producers. Norway has created almost $1 trillion from its own oil wealth by creating a revenue pool from oil extraction and using the funds to pay for social and green initiatives. Question: where does your party stand on Canada creating a national pool to fund social and environmental programs from oil revenue? I will take a moment to caution the candidates again to speak only to what your party commits to do and what you are planning for the future. This is not an opportunity to attack your opponents. Thank you. We will start with Ray.
The NDP is the only party that has taken the bold step to remove and immediately end fossil fuel subsidies. That is at the core of a lot of things that are driving the climate issue. And in turn take that money and use it towards what matters, which are people, their futures, their well-being, and for their children. That is a very, very key part that they have decided that they're going to do in their platform, and I totally support that. It's something that we should have done a long time ago. And at the same time that they do this, transition all of the workers from those industries into the clean alternative energies. Because as being the person that led the charge for unionization, we can't forget the workers that are going to be impacted, nor the industries that are going to be affected, as well as putting forward money for companies that are involved in green technology and can bring us a cleaner, brighter future for our families.
Thank you. John?
Great, thank you. When we were elected in 2015, we immediately committed $20 billion to help with the transition to a clean and green economy, as well as $20 billion for transit, which can also help with transit, with climate change. I sat on the Environment and Sustainable Development Committee for 4 years and chaired it for the past year. In that time, we did a number of studies and looked at how the federal government can provide leadership on the climate change issue. We heard time and time again from experts that a carbon tax is the best way to go. And so we looked at the programs in Canada. There were a number of provinces that did not have a carbon tax, and so we brought in the federal backstop to level the playing field. BC, as many of us know, have had their own carbon tax, provincially mandated since about 2008, and whatever the federal government does, that program will stay in place. It's provincial jurisdiction. But we also have committed to the Trans Mountain Pipeline. All proceeds from that will be invested in a transition to a clean economy to get us off of oil and gas, and we've committed.
Thank you. The next, Caleb.
So the Green Party of Canada, we want to end fossil fuel subsidies. Another issue that is plaguing our system is that we have a tax system that rewards large corporations to send their money overseas. So instead of paying 27 to 30% taxes, a corporation actually pays 15 to 17%, which is actually lower than the middle class income tax. So we really need a whole system change for this to really combat this crisis. We have 18 months to act. 18 months. And 11 years to actually do something to save our children's futures. That's what we're fighting for. That's what we're talking about. This is the greatest crisis that human species will ever face. It is larger than the World War II crisis. And we have to have...
Thank you. Tamara.
So it's clear that we are failing to hit our targets. I mean, here in BC, we've had carbon tax for 10 years, and our emissions are going up. And all the carbon tax does is make life less affordable for you. So the Conservatives are going to bring support to green technology. And I want to give you just a personal example of green technology. Years ago, we bought a biomass boiler and it was the newest, latest, greatest thing. We got it out of Italy. We went out to Italy. We got this fantastic biomass boiler that had the most amazing new bag filter that would ensure that our smokestack would have the very minimal emissions. GBRD came out, they tested it, and it was fantastic. They were shocked at how good this technology works. Well, we can actually make green technology here in Canada that we can share around the world, and we can actually have a global impact on carbon emissions. So that's what the Conservatives are planning to do.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are halfway through. So I'm going to give you a bio break. Stand up, give it a stretch. You've got 30 seconds. Give it a jiggle. We need to have our energy back and our focus. We've got halfway through. Focused on what you're offering. Crosstalk just makes it enough.
What relevance is what's going on in Surrey have to what these people, they're running for Cloverdale Langley. So why are we wasting time asking them questions about Surrey? Why don't we just concentrate on
Surrey, Cloverdale is Surrey. Cloverdale is Surrey.
Did you say 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
So watch it close.
Right there. Okay, folks, come on back to your chairs, please. Okay, I'd like to get started again, people. Can you please return to your seats? Give it a little hustle. You've all had a chance to get your energy back and bring your focus back to what we're doing here. Alrighty, folks. Here we go. Canada's transportation sector is one of our largest greenhouse gas emitters. Congestion, meanwhile, accounts for billions of dollars in lost productivity each year in regions like Metro Vancouver. How is your party helping Canadians make better transportation choices, such as investing in public transit, better fuel standards for cars made in Canada, or cycling infrastructure, or perhaps subsidies for electric cars? I will start this question with Tamara.
Candy in my mouth. So I think that I've actually had an opportunity to meet with all the mayors, Val Vandenbroek, Doug McCallum, and Jack Froese, and I was able to go there with the infrastructure critic, Matt Genero, MP Matt Genero, and we discussed, what are the needs, and one of the biggest things, obviously, is being able to get people off the highway, that not sitting in traffic and just idling. So the fact that there's 21 mayors that are all excited and behind this, the TransLink is an exciting thing, because that makes it much easier for the federal government to support the work that they're doing. And that was exactly the message that we heard, that we're going to make sure that those infrastructure projects that are needed are going to be assisted to move forward.
Thank you. Ray?
Thank you. Our party's put forward a pretty significant platform in terms of this. What they're looking to do is get more buses electrified. So you're going to have buses now that, rather than using the old gasoline, they're going to be using electric services. What they've also put forward in our platform is retrofitting homes to reduce emissions. I, as a homeowner, went federally looking for subsidies so I can get solar panels. Guess what? There was nothing there. Provincially, there was nothing there. I, as an individual, am trying to remove my carbon footprint, but there's nothing either in terms of the federal government being able to allow me to make that difference. Instead, what they do, they turn around and they tax you, carbon tax, which is not the way to do it. The other thing, too, as well, is improving the SkyTrain station and the extension of the SkyTrain here all the way to Langley. It's going to reduce a lot of pollution, and it's something that's long overdue. Thank you.
Caleb?
So we need to increase spending on our transportation. So buses, the frequency of buses, the number of buses switching over to electrical buses. We need to get off fossil fuel vehicles as well, and that involves getting rid of all fossil fuel purchases of vehicles in 10 years too. This isn't going to be easy, but we need these drastic changes in our transportation to be able to get people to and from places, especially in Vancouver, where people are working more and more away from the spot that they actually are working. And that involves bringing SkyTrain to Langley, that involves improving our transportation, and that involves making low-income Canadians in this riding and across Canada pay less for transport.
John?
The second issue that I hear when I'm out on the doorsteps in the community is the need for better transit. On the weekend, I met a young man, a father, who told me that he spends over 3 hours per day commuting to and from his job in Vancouver. That's 3 hours away from his family and from our community. And so we need to continue pushing for transit improvements in our south of the Fraser region. We have $1.3 billion on the table for the SkyTrain extension to pay for 40% of the project. We had been told that would cover the SkyTrain all the way to Langley City, but now we're, again, short $1.3 billion because of the increased costs. And so our party has not yet released our platform on transit. I'm hoping that that's going to be coming in the coming days. But I have been and will continue to advocate for the federal government to be a key supporter for transit improvements, including the SkyTrain expansion to Langley City.
Thank you. As we've seen south of the border, government leadership plays a strong role in the social fabric of a nation. There is a rising anti-immigration sentiment, growing numbers of hate crimes, and racially motivated extremism that is also on the upswing internationally. What would you and your party do to stop this tide and restore the respect and peace to Canada's cultural mosaic? John, we'll start with you.
This, I think, is a really concerning trend that we're seeing across the world. The rhetoric coming out of the States and in other places is very concerning, and I think that Canada needs to lead. We have made huge commitments to our immigrants, to the diversity in our community. I think that we need to lead by example. The words that we choose are very important. And our government has been very inclusive and will continue to be inclusive on immigration policies. We have refugees. There are millions of refugees living in refugee camps around the world. And we need to look at how we bring those to Canada, a fair share within our overall immigration levels. We need to help integrate them quickly into society. We also need to look at other immigration levels, from economic immigration to other categories. But it's this the diversity of our country is really our strength. It helps us it can help with peace, it can help with trade, and so these are where I think the policies of multiculturalism in Canada need to be strengthened and maintained.
Thank you. Caleb?
So when we look at our communities, we have to look at this as a way that we need to bring people together. So how can we do this by bringing people together? That's by creating strong communities with strong social programs, lifting people out of poverty, reducing income inequality. These are all things that are leading, I would say, more extreme right-wing groups and parties around the world. When you look down to the south and you see the election of Trump, a lot of those individuals are working class people that are trying to get by living, and they're having a really hard time. And when they look at the politicians that have been in power, the establishment politicians that have been handing out money on one side to corporations and on the other side trying to do the work for the people, and clearly it hasn't been working.
Tamara.
So the very first thing that we need to look at is closing the loophole of the safe third country agreement. So many people are jumping the queue and they're clogging our system. We have a massive backlog of people that are claiming refugee status when there are many people that are trying to come to Canada legally. So we need to make sure that that fair system comes back. Secondly, the thing that the Conservatives have always supported, and we ourselves actually have also seen work really well, is private sponsorship. My husband and I privately sponsored a Christian Syrian refugee family back in 2015. Within 7 months, he was in his own home, working in his own profession, and he had a great life of dignity. And that's because he was supported by our family, by our church community, and they do really well with that system.
Ray?
I can speak firsthand of being an immigrant coming to Canada. We moved here because we still think, and so many people think, that Canada is a beacon of hope for thousands and millions of people who want to come and live here. It's a great country. It's up to us to keep it that way. And for the new immigrants and people coming here, we have to make it a place where they are respected, where their trades and their training and their expertise are acknowledged, and that they are able to move on, or at least bring that to our society. Because right now, as it stands, there's so many issues involved in that. They're not respected, they're not accepted. We have to stop that. We have to find a ways as a society, whether it's municipally, provincially, federally, to be able to change those processes as well, to give them a better future. These are significant issues that we have to address, along, as Tamara said, with the people jumping the queue trying to get into Canada illegally. Let's not forget our own people here first as well.
Thank you. We know arts and culture is an important, growing, and supportive industry in Surrey and Langley. What is your opinion on the arts contribution, and how would you advocate federally and personally to support this industry? We'll start with Caleb.
I am an artist myself, a painter and a photographer. I believe arts is incredibly important to communities. It's important to our schools as well. So we need to make sure that our education is promoting the arts in schools as well as within our communities. And how we go about that is by increasing our ability to allow people to be creative and be who they are, and have the financial security to be able to pursue those passions.
John?
Well, our government as well supports, and strongly supports, a diverse and thriving arts community. We've invested and have done things in tourism related to the arts. I think to the question of an arts center in Surrey, we have so many amazing performers and things. We need a venue. Our government has previously supported infrastructure, and I would continue to advocate very much for infrastructure across the spectrum, not just roads and bridges and transit, but also things like playing fields and sports fields and ice rinks in Cloverdale and Performing Arts Centre. I think these are definitely a role that the federal government can play to make sure that our communities are thriving and diverse. It also helps keep our kids off the streets, and it keeps them occupied in productive ways so that they can stay away from guns and gangs and crime. And so I think that there's a really incredible role for the federal government to play in supporting the arts community, including through infrastructure.
Thank you. Ray?
Arts and culture is a very important part of our society and a makeup. We have to recognize and keep the diversity of our country. Canada is made up of so many different ethnicities, and they're all great. That's what makes this country great, as opposed to what you see across the border, stateside. You know, this is a huge fundamental part of who we are as a people, and it's up to every single one of us to do whatever we can at a federal level to promote the ethnicities and the diversity, and to be able to help keep this intact so people will always know who we are and our country and our ancestry. These are things we have to promote and keep. You know, where we come from, where we are. In Winnipeg, there's a group called Folklorama that brings together all of the ethnicities in the summer. And people who are in Winnipeg know about this. We should bring things like that here to Surrey, for sure.
Thank you. Tamara?
So I have to tell you a personal story. I have 5 kids, and all my 5 kids are string players. They all attended the Langley Community Music School, which is an absolutely incredible resource for this community. We spent about 20 years, pretty much most of our life, ferrying our kids back and forth to the school. They were going to build us a little room with some cots in it so that we could, sleep a little bit once in a while. I cannot tell you how much our family has gained from the resource of the music training that was received there. And it's something that I hope that all people here in our riding can enjoy. I know that the Conservatives have just recently put in a art tax credit. So it would have been great back in the day when I was paying those bills, but I really, art and music culture is an incredible thing that really builds a strong community.
Thank you. As we all know, Canada is facing an overdose crisis with unprecedented numbers of deaths due to overdose and tainted street drugs. What is your party position on decriminalizing all drugs across Canada and the provision of a safe drug supply program for people living with substance use disorders? I will start with Ray.
Everybody knows about the opioid crisis that's happening, not just here in the Lower Mainland, but across Canada. A lot of this is tied to counterfeit pharmaceuticals. I have a company, and the mandate, because I ran the program for the RCMP back in the day, is counterfeit goods. It has gone from just bags and purses now to electrical, to pharmaceuticals, to everything. That is a huge issue that is impacting people across the country. We, as a government, our government needs to be able to put checks and balances in place to reduce this harm. And if you identify companies or people bringing in or involved in that trade, you have to be able to stop it, or at least put the legislation in place to reduce and prosecute those involved in those things. So, safe drug supply, that's key. You gotta put more emphasis and more resources to change that issue.
Sorry, Tamara?
So let me just get this right. You said legalize opioids? That was what you were asking?
What is your party position on decriminalizing all drugs across Canada and the provision of a safe drug supply program for people living with substance use disorders?
Okay, well, I think that we can see how the legalization of cannabis has worked here in our riding. And I think it's pretty safe to say that there's not been a great rollout of the situation. I think the idea of legalization doesn't help our community. We need a community that's strong and that is giving the right kind of services to people that are challenged with addiction, and legalizing is not necessarily going to assist them. So sorry, I can't say any more than that, sorry.
Thank you. John?
I've had the opportunity, and I'm sure Caleb will speak to this, but to visit some of the clinics in the downtown east side that use a safe drug supply. And these can be life-changing to people living with addictions. It can save lives. And I think that we need to look very closely as the federal government on a leadership. I think every one of us, or many of us, I've lost a friend to the opioid crises, and I had the opportunity to speak to a mother who lost her daughter, a 16-year-old daughter, just a couple of days ago. And families are being impacted negatively, and to take a hard line that people don't need drugs or that we can't support them, I think is really cruel. I think that our party has not come out with a position right at this point on decriminalizing all drugs, but we do have programs to help treatments of addictions, and I think that that's what we need to do, is a compassionate and caring approach. Nobody wants to be an addict. People make mistakes, and they should not die for it, and that's the kind of compassion I want to see.
Caleb?
So we believe that we should have drugs decriminalized. We have a tainted supply of opioids in the Lower Mainland, as well as other drugs like cocaine, these things that are killing not only our young people, but are also killing people who have severe mental health issues and addiction issues as well at the same time. We need to be able to provide these people with medical access to these types of drugs so that we can try and stabilize their lives. These are humans as well. They're people that have dignity. They're individuals. At one point they were a child too. These are all people that deserve a chance, and we have the ability to support those people and help them. And I think 2019, we need to move past the stigma associated with addictions.
Thank you. In the homeless counts of 2017, more Canadian veterans are being identified as being homeless. Mental health and addictions are overrepresented by our veteran population as well. Promises made to help and support and serve our veterans have been repetitively broken. In fact, the last two governments have taken Canada's veterans to court in efforts to reduce and deny supports. What guarantees and resources will you and your party commit to in order to ensure that the people who serve Canada through our military do not end up being struck by poverty, health, and housing challenges? I will start with Tamara. Sorry.
So first of all, we owe our veterans a debt of gratitude. They fought for the freedom that we enjoy. So it's important that we fix the system. We need to clear that. The Conservatives are saying that we're going to clear out the backlog within 24 months. There's not going to be a constant reassessment. I mean, at this point in time, if you've lost a limb, every year you have to go back to prove that you're still disabled. It's just taking up time. We need a reliable pension system that's not constantly changing. One veteran gets this pension, another veteran gets that pension. We need to strengthen the transition services. I have a friend who was injured, his back was injured in Afghanistan. He was appointed a caseworker who ends up not being a veteran affairs person, but a Manulife employee. So we need to make sure that we guide these veterans through these rough waters.
John?
Okay, I'm struggling a bit with this one, Rebecca, I have to say, as the moderator. I was given direction at the break that I can't talk about the things our government has done, that I have to look forward, but you've just challenged on what our government has done.
The previous two governments.
Right, so I would like to just simply say, for context, that we've invested $10 billion in veterans, and that has been a huge step forward in righting some of the wrongs that we had seen. Now, as far as moving forward, I agree with Tamara on that our veterans have given their service to our country, and we owe them a debt of gratitude. So how do we deal with their issues and addictions? We have committed to improving many of the benefits. Mental health support, we are dealing with, are opening a PTSD research center, a center of excellence to help specifically with veterans to make sure that issues of mental health are dealt with, that they can have safe housing, family situations, and so we are looking at moving forward to continuing to support our veterans post-service.
Thank you. Caleb?
So we've been in Afghanistan for now over about 14 years, and we've had Canadians dying and we've had Canadians getting injured overseas. This is obviously a huge issue, and when they come back to Canada, we essentially throw them to the curb for the services that they've been doing for our country. So we need a government and we need politicians that are accountable to their constituents, that will put forward programs like universal basic income so those soldiers that can't work aren't falling into poverty. We can put in a program like universal pharmacare to help them pay for their medications, or completely pay for their medications so they don't go into debt trying to get medicine. We have affordable housing so that we can house these individuals so they're not going homeless. We increase their funding for healthcare to get them the supports they need. And we give them the ability to go back to school and get educated by providing them with free tuition. And if we do that, we can not only improve their lives, but the lives of our economies.
Thank you. Ray?
Significant issue. We send our women and men into the world to fight wars to protect our freedoms. They come back broken, injured, disabled, and previous governments have done what? Kicked them to the curb, like Callum said. Correct, 100%. I am a veteran. I have sent people to protest in Parliament Hill for the way our veterans were treated. We've got to do a heck of a lot better. These are the people that sacrifice everything sometimes to protect us and the freedoms that we have. Our party's committed to reducing a lot of the things that were put in by previous governments. One of the fundamental things that should be done is to rewrite the Veterans Charter pre-2006. Everybody knows what happened, the government that was in charge at that time. So we're committed to ensuring that our veterans get the help, get the care, get the support, get the training if they come back disabled or broken down, where they can live lives and people can show them the respect for the sacrifices that they have made.
Thank you. Thriving business and industry require employees, both skilled and unskilled labor, as well as consumers and markets for their products. Surrey and Langley employers have been struggling to find both employees and consumers because of lack of housing and effective transit, as well as other issues of affordability. What would you commit to doing to assure that the needs of the business, the community, and the economy in Cloverdale Langley City are met? I will start with Caleb.
So with the Green Party of Canada, we want to keep taxes low on small businesses because we realize that small businesses are the most important part to our Canadian economies. We have to change our tax system and reform how we tax individuals, and that comes back down to the wealthy and large corporations that are roughly getting about 15% on tax avoidance. These are things that will be able to help our communities and improve them. I believe that our social programs will not only, yes, they might cost money, but this will be an investment in our community that will then go back into our communities by allowing us to spend that money that we give individuals in the economy. So, for example, our universal basic income, those people that would be getting this money from the government would then be spending it in their shops in these local areas.
John?
The issue that you've raised for employers is it's a complex one. There's many pieces to it. As Caleb said, small businesses are so important to this riding. And so there's, as you said, things like affordability of housing. We need to deal with that. We have to have a suitable rental housing stock for our workers. We have to allow the employees to enter into the housing market. One of the things we've announced is that with the first-time home buyers incentive that I spoke about before the break, it was previously capped at just under $400,000, which anyone knows in the Lower Mainland doesn't really help. And so we've committed to raising that to $785,000 if we are re-elected to help first-time home buyers get into the housing market in areas which could then help attract some of the talent that we need. It's not just a housing issue, it's also a training and retraining, skills development, and we've made commitments to helping maintain a workforce that meets today's skills through a number of training and retraining programs, as well as immigration.
Thank you. Ray?
This is a significant issue. As everybody knows, small businesses, in my opinion, are the backbone of every community. They provide employment. They give you families the ability to live. For young people coming up, the ability to start a career sometimes and to develop themselves. Our party has put forward a pretty significant platform in terms of the housing, low-cost housing that they want to put forward, build over 500,000 homes. What they've also done, what ties into that, is the National Pharmacare Program, which removes the costs for businesses to provide healthcare, dental. If you can free up that money, you're going to have businesses now that can employ significantly more people and grow and be able to provide, resources for our community. That is a big, big thing. Those two components tie in and will support people in the business industry as well as people living in the various municipalities.
Tamara?
So I think Ray was cheating. He was checking out my notes here because I had said the exact same thing. Conservatives have always known that small business is the backbone of job creation in our community. And I think I mentioned it in my chamber video, the fact that what we're going to do is we're going to reduce regulations. And they just brought out the platform. They're going to reduce regulations by 25%. So get this statistic. In the last 4 years, so since 2015, 4,300 job-killing regulations have been put on the books. That's a mind-boggling stumbling block for business. And so that's number one. One thing that also was really a problem for us, we had a rainy day fund. As a small business, you never know what's going to happen, so you want to have a little rainy day fund. And they basically said, you need to spend that or we're going to tax you. And that's also job killing. We need to support small business, not hurt them.
Thank you. So, that's a lot of questions and a lot of answers, and we're going to end this evening pretty much on time, I hope, but we're going to end by asking everyone, each candidate, to have a final statement. This is your opportunity to remind people who you are in your platforms and ask them to vote for you, or you may choose to rebut a previous response from one of your opponents, but you have 1 minute to do it. And I'm going to start randomly with John.
Well, as I said in my opening statement, I think that this really is a critical election. And I've spent the last 4 years working really hard, listening to this community and taking those those concerns forward. Issues of affordability, of transit. We've heard about community safety and the environment. I really believe that environmental change, climate change, is the biggest issue facing the planet, and we need to work on it now. We can't be in denial. And we also need to continue working on diversity. We talked about that during questions. I think that we are at a really critical point in Canadian society where we have to decide about how open our borders are going to be to welcoming new Canadians and the talent that they bring. So these are all of the issues that I will continue to take forward on behalf of the constituents of Cloverdale Langley City based on the 6 years of discussions that I've had. And thank you to each of you for coming out this evening. I know time is valuable, and it's really amazing to see a good turnout for such an important discussion. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you. Ray.
Thank you very much, folks, for coming out and hearing us present on the various platforms and issues and ideas. I'm committed to making a significant difference for the people that live in my riding of Cloverdale Langley City. I've demonstrated that I'm one of these guys who will stand and hold the line for thousands of people, as I have, taking on the various governments as I have, as the previous national president of our association, or police association. When it comes to the things that we talked about here today in terms of affordability, in terms of housing, in terms of climate, these are all significant issues that I will bring forward as your voice. As my daughter say, it's not all about chitty chitty chat chat. If you ever watch Kung Fu Panda, people talk the talk, but it's very few of us that are actually going to deliver. I am one of these guys. When it comes to important things, I don't go away. I will stay the course and make sure that we get resolution. So thank you for coming out and listening to us, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to speak to you.
Tamara.
It's been wonderful to come here this evening. It was a little nerve-wracking. I thought it was kind of like getting thrown into a fighter, as like a fighter pilot into a fighter jet and sent off on my way to do this. But thank you very much for listening. I hope you've heard some things that you found interesting. I love Cloverdale Langley City. This is an amazing community to live in, and I just hope that I'll be able to represent you in Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you. Caleb.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out today, and the organization for putting this on for us. I appreciate it. Having the opportunity to speak to everyone honestly and speaking truth to power today, I really appreciate that. We need to seriously consider what we are going to be doing here in the next decade in relation to the climate crisis and what that means for our future. And that's not just our environment and where we live, but that is also economically our careers, our jobs, our homes. Like, this is going to affect just about every single aspect. It's been estimated that if we do not address the climate crisis, we will face up to the equivalent of 2 Great Depressions worth of damage to our GDP. We can't sustain that and not do anything at the same time. The UN has suggested that if we do not act, by the end of the century, we could have 1 billion climate refugees.
Thank you.
Please vote Green.
So I thank our candidates again. I know it's nerve-wracking, and it probably is a little hot under these lights and under the stares of our audience, and I thank your audience as well. You've been wonderful, very respectful and patient. It can be a long process, but I will remind you that this is your process. As I said at the outset, politics is my jam, and I'll tell you why. Because it's not just about voting every 4 years federally or provincially or municipally. It's not about my team and their team and your team and our team. It's about how we live. It's about our country, it's about our history, and it's our future. Politics is everything from the roads you drive on, the food you eat, the schools your children go to, your hospital waits you sit in, waiting and waiting. It is everything that you deal with on a daily basis, from the eggs on your plate in the morning to the coffee you drink at 10. It is, don't do that, Paul. It is your business. It's the business of life in Canada. And I ask you, I in fact implore you to vote on October 21st. Take what you heard tonight into consideration, but don't stop there. Read the platforms, meet the candidates, ask your questions. This is your country, this is your duty. And I thank you very much.